The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. Read by the amazing Mr. C. Now the star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star-bellied Sneetches would brag, "We're the best kind of Sneetch on the beaches." With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. "We'll have nothing to do with the plain-bellied sort." And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. When star-bellied children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain-bellied children had none upon theirs. When the star-bellied Sneetches had frankfurter roasts, or picnics, or parties, or marshmallow toasts, they never invited the plain-bellied Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark on the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain-bellied Sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. "My friends," he announced in a voice clear and keen, "my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need. My prices are low, and I work at great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed." Then quickly Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. And he said, "You want stars like a star-bellied Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard." So they clambered inside. Then the big machine roared. And it clonked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burked, and it bopped them about. But the thing really worked. When the plain-bellied Sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start. "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your frankfurter parties." "Good grief," groaned the ones who had stars at the first. "We're still the best Sneetches, and they are the worst. But now, how in the world do we know?" They all frowned. "If which kind is what, or the other way round?" Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, "Things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who? That's perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best Sneetches on beaches, and all it'll cost you is $10 eaches." "Belly stars are no longer in style," said McBean. "What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars, so you won't look like Sneetches who have them on theirs." And that handy machine, working very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with snoots in the air they paraded about, and they opened their beaks and they let out a shout. "We know who is who, now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of Sneetches are Sneetches without." Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, things really got into a terrible mess. All the rest of that day on those wild screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up Sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machine they raced round and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money, they kept going through, till neither the plain nor the star-bellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. "They never will learn. No, you can't teach a Sneetch." But McBean was quite wrong, I'm quite happy to say, that the Sneetches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that Sneetches are Sneetches, and no kind of Sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day all the Sneetches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon theirs. The end.
The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss, presented by Dayana Estrada and Emily Mendez. Fantasy. This literature is a genre type of fiction. Fantasy stories are about magical people or beings that exist in fantastic or strange worlds. Stories like these provides entertainment for adults and children. Fantasy stories are important to young children as they bring important themes and commonly positive traits. Themes. Thinking only in short term, as this makes them different than the other Sneetches. They jump at the idea of removing or adding a star to their stomach as it makes them different than the other. Reasoning merely in a brief term makes a pondering in the stories enclosed in the book. The Sneetches may simply see the benefit of having stars on their stomachs or not, and end up getting economically coned by a sales shark who takes benefit of the quick perception of both kinds of Sneetches. Contrary to this theme, the other theme of equality, as Sneetches learn their lessons, as seen in the last page. It says, Sneetches are Sneetches, and no kind of Sneetch is the best of the beaches. At the end, they united as one, regardless of who contains a star on their bellies. This is an important theme to show to children as they are learning about equality and how to treat one another.
Symbolism is something that is seen in this story. The main thing that was symbolized was the stars. At the beginning of the story, the stars set them apart from one another, and those that have one are considered superior. The stars also resemble the social classes that are present in the real world. For Mr. Silver McBean, the stars represent money, as he is seen taking advantage of the Sneetches simply for money. However, at the end of the story, the stars become irrelevant, and the Sneetches are considered equal regardless if they have or do not have a star. Metaphors is another part of this story, as social classes and racism are represented through the Sneetches. The Sneetches are rude to one another simply because they are different than them. Having a star makes a Sneetch superior than the other, which represents social classes. The rascal, which is represented by Sylvester McBean, he is seen as the opportunist. He takes advantage of a situation for self-gain. He is the one that brings the machines into the story and simply takes advantage of the Sneetches wanting to be different than the other until he rips them of all their money. Another important thing to note is the irony present in the story. The removing and adding of the stars makes the stars lose their meaning. When one adds the star and the other removes it, it's ironic when the Sneetches do not make their mind. They simply rather not be with what makes them superior, which was the star, and they just want to be different than the other. Luckily, at the end, they learn their lesson and do not care about the star anymore.
Rhyme. This story uses a rhyme scheme which contains a stanza of A-B rhyme. So the pattern of stanza rhyme are those which rhyme in a pattern. So for instance, line 1 rhymes with line 3, which is A, and line 2 with line 4. This book uses rhyming stanza. Now the star belly Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain belly Sneetches had none upon theirs.